unusual time at the beginning of next month. That'll be October the 1st, I believe. Well, today is the third in a 7-part sermon series that I've been doing. I began several weeks ago, entitled The ABCs of Spiritual Vitality. The ABCs of Spiritual Vitality. Now, I began the sermon series by beginning with the letter A, which stands for acceptance. And that word acceptance is just another word for God's grace, God's acceptance of us. And we learned from that sermon that because God accepts us, that empowers us to accept Jesus, it empowers us to accept others, and it empowers us to accept ourselves. The following Sunday, we looked at the letter B, a second component for spiritual vitality, balance. And we learned that we need to take time each day to find that quiet and lonely place to be alone with God and to get clear about our purpose. We also learned that even Jesus had to periodically make his escape from the maddening crowd and go to that quiet and lonely place and be alone with his Father. That's how Jesus recharged his batteries. And we must do no less. That's how we build balance in our spiritual lives. Today, though, we're going to look at a third component of spiritual vitality, represented by the letter C, communication. Communication is so important to our spiritual lives and relationships. And today we're going to look at some steps we can take that James suggests to improve our communication. But before we do so, let's join together in prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. In 1878, the first telephone company came into existence, called the District Telephone Company of New Haven. It had 21 subscribers, 4 of whom worked for the phone company. 145 years later, there are between 7 and 8 billion cell phones in the world. Phones have come a long way. Communication has come a long way. And I want to show you in a video that Shelley's going to show just how far it has come. So Shelley, go ahead and show the video. And I want you to take a look at this. I think as you can see from that video, communication has come a long way technologically, but has it come a long way relationally? Communication is so important to the personal relationships in our lives. We know that in terms of business. We know that in terms of our personal life, to maintain friendships, for meaningful marriages, for helping our kids and grandkids along. Communication is so critical when marriages struggle, when our teenagers are having a hard time, when we're stressed and distressed. Communication is often at the heart of it. Communication is so vitally important for our spiritual lives and relationships. The question, though, is not so much the importance as the improvement of communication. Let me repeat that. The question is not so much the importance as the improvement of communication. There are three major steps James suggests that we can take to improve our communication in the church that Judge Arthur shared with you a few moments ago. And I'd like us to look at each of those major steps he suggests. But before I do so, let me remind you, if you haven't already done so, to pick up a handout that has today's sermon outline. Now, the sermon outline is very detailed today because I have a lot of information I want to share with you. But I think this information will be helpful to us in improving our communication. So if you haven't picked one up, I invite you to do so now. Fill in the blanks, take notes. Consider how these three suggestions James makes might improve our communication, not just in the church, but in our marriages, our friendships, at home, at work, at school, wherever we encounter people. So let's begin with the first major step James suggests we can take to improve our communication. First of all, and I said this in the children's sermon, first of all, we need to be quick to listen. We need to be quick to listen. We need to be good listeners. There was a professional golfer who played many years ago by the name of Tommy Bolt. Tommy Bolt, maybe you've heard of him. One day Tommy was out playing a tournament where he had a caddy who was known for talking a lot. I guess you could call him a chatty caddy. So he turned to his caddy and said, "Listen, I'm going to need to concentrate to do well in this tournament. So what I want you to do is to just say, 'Yes, Mr. Bolt,' 'No, Mr. Bolt.' Don't say anything else, understand? I need to focus, so don't say anything else." Bolt started out well, but he got down a couple of holes. And he hit one of those shots where he got in the rough. He got in the woods. Now, you golfers all know what that means. You hit it, and it goes in there, and the ball is always behind a tree or under a bush. So he hit one of those drives, and he went into the woods and found the ball. And he bent down and looked toward the green. And in order to get the right shot, he had to hit the ball in ways that it would go under a limb, over the lake, hit the green, and roll down the hill. One of those impossible kinds of golf shots. So Mr. Bolt turned to his caddy and said, "You know, I'm going to need the 5-iron to make this shot." The caddy replied, "No, Mr. Bolt." "Yes, I'm going to need the 5-iron to hit this shot." "No, Mr. Bolt." "Well, give me that 5-iron." "No, Mr. Bolt. No, Mr. Bolt." He takes the 5-iron anyway, and he makes a beautiful shot. I mean, it's a magnificent shot. It goes under the limb, over the lake, hits the green, rolls down the hill, 2 feet from the cup. 2 feet from the cup. He goes up and puts it in, or puts it in, and he turns to his caddy and says, "You can talk now. You can talk now." The caddy looks at him and says, "Mr. Bolt, that was not your ball. That was not your ball." Now, listening's hard work. Most communication breaks down because we don't listen. But you know, there are 4 things we can do to improve our listening. First of all, and I mentioned this in the children's sermon, remember the ratio, 2 ears to 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as we speak. Second, listen with the eyes as well as the ears. Communication is only 7% verbal and 93% nonverbal. Third, listen for both facts and feelings. Listen to the head and the heart. And fourth, listen humbly. Don't get caught up in your own emotions, expectations, and experiences, but be open to entering the world of others by listening. You see, being a good listener is 90% of effective communication. So as James says, we need to be quick to listen. And that brings us to the second point. The second step James suggests we can take to improve our communication. Second, we need to be slow to speak. We need to be slow to speak. We need to be careful about what we say. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the wisdom books. How many of you remember the wisdom books of the Bible? You remember what they are? Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. They all talk about speaking. Proverbs 18 warns us about words. It says, the power of life and death is in the tongue, and those who exercise it will eat of its fruit. The power of life and death is in the tongue, and those who exercise it will eat of its fruit. There's power in the words that you and I speak. There's power in the words that you and I say. You see, when we speak, we either build up or tear down. By the way, did you realize that on average, Americans speak about 13,500 words a day? That's a lot of words. The question is, are we aware of the power of those words and their potential to bring life to those around us? If you were to take a random sampling of your words, how many of them help, heal, build up, and bless? You know, the Apostle Paul encourages us to use our words wisely when he says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. If we would only live by those words. You know, I'm convinced that if our congregation were to truly live by those words that Paul said, if we were careful about what we said, we wouldn't have meetings like we had last Thursday night. Paul encourages us to use our words wisely. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Wise words, well worth living. You know, I like to use the criteria of the 3 C's. The 3 C's to help me think about what I say each day. And those 3 C's can help us in our communication. Now, one of those 3 C's is we need to encourage one another. We need to compliment one another. What that means is that we speak our words in a way that lift people up and that encourage them. We speak words that celebrate people's accomplishments. And we recognize the accomplishments that they've achieved. So, the second C is, did I comfort anyone? Did I comfort anyone? Am I aware that there are people around me who are hurting and in pain? Did I comfort anyone? And third, did I speak a word of cheer, encouraging those who need to be lifted up? So we need to compliment and comfort each other, and we need to also do that in every situation. So increasing those 3 C's can help us to strengthen our words and make our words more powerful that we share each day to help build and bring love to people. That's what we need to do. So you see, we need to be very careful about what we say and how we say it. We need, as James says, to be slow to speak. Slow to speak. And that brings us to the third and final directive or suggestion James makes to help us improve our communication. This is the third step. And in some ways, it may be the most difficult step of all. We need to be slow to get angry. We need to be slow to get angry. You know, anger is one of the most destructive forces to communication. Once you get angry, you stop listening. And once you stop listening, you stop communicating. Now, let's be honest, folks. All of us get angry sometimes. Did you know that even Jesus got angry? He did. Read the Gospels. We have a couple of well-documented instances where Jesus clearly lost his cool. I worry about people who say they never get angry. We can redirect anger in a positive way. We can contain anger so that there's no collateral damage from it. But anyone who tells you that they never get angry is in denial. They have a serious problem that will someday manifest itself, perhaps in a tragic way. Gilda Carle, that's C-A-R-L-E. Gilda Carle, an anger management expert, has developed a three-step frame it, claim it, tame it anger control program. It works every time, she says. The first step to managing anger, framing it, means taking a step back from the situation and collecting yourself. Count to 10 or walk around the block or whatever you need to do, Carl says. Next, you got to claim your anger and admit to yourself that you're upset. Here, instead of focusing on being mad, you need to discover the real issue that's making you angry. Once you discover what the real problem is, the third step is taming your anger. Here you have a decision to make. Is the problem something that isn't really that important? Or is it upsetting you to the point that your self-worth is being eroded? Now, when the problem is of major importance to you, then you need to take action. You need to confront the person with whom you're angry. However, if you're not able to do that, there's still one more possibility. Turn your anger over to God. Turn your anger over to God. Colleen Jennings Fraioli, a few years ago, in Decision magazine, described her way of dealing with anger. For those times when she feels overwhelmed and needs to vent, she's developed a habit she learned from David's example in Psalm 55. David poured his heart out to God. If David could pour his heart out to God, Colleen says, she can too. You see, every night before she goes to sleep, she dumps all of her toxic waste. Frustrations, irritations, disappointments, and hurts onto God. She may ramble, she says, and she often cries, but she gets it out. She gets it out. She says she can almost hear God say, "It's okay, I'm here with you. Let it go. It's okay, I'm here with you. Let it go." Folks, that's great advice. Turn your anger over to God. Well, if we'll practice these three major steps that James suggests, we'll not only improve our communication, we'll also enrich our spiritual life and relationships. Well, in conclusion, we need to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. These three steps can help improve our communication. Whoever has the ears to hear, let that one hear what the Spirit says to the church. Amen.